I'll call the meeting, the Bellefonte Borough Work Session to meeting, or to order, Wednesday, June 7th.
Thank you.
Welcome everyone to the Bellefonte Borough Council Work Session. No council action is taken during this work session. Mr. Bernier, do you have a trivia question for us?
I do. Can anyone tell me what two rivers form to make the Ohio?
Monongahela and Allegheny.
Where does the Ohio River begin and end?
At the point in Pittsburgh,
Pittsburgh
which I was there last
and
week.
the Gulf of Mexico.
That's an excellent guess, Don, but that's incorrect.
Close to the
It
Mississippi.
empties 981 miles later in the Mississippi.
That's good.
So it does make it to the Gulf of Mexico.
Still.
It's the only river to run uphill.
Well, in the United States, because the Nile runs uphill, I think. Or north, you mean?
In the United States.
I know this. It's
What was the question?
We're
It's
playing
the
more
only
trivia.
river to run uphill in the United States.
The Monongahela. Yes, it does. Well, it runs from Morgantown, West Virginia to Pittsburgh. I live there.
I'm
gonna
all
go-
downhill from there.
I'm gonna go to Susquehanna.
what is it?
Chicago River.
Oh,
There
of
was
course.
several locks, they reversed it.
They reversed it.
Check on the Monongahela because it runs from Morgantown to Pittsburgh.
All downhill.
What's the highest point east of the Mississippi, Walt?
I believe that's just outside of Du Bois on 80.
No,
We're talking about on 80.
East of the Mississippi
Oh, you're talking about,
on the east
Including the
coast.
mountains.
including the mountains, I'm not
This is
sure.
gonna be a
Is it,
trivia game show here.
White Mountains in New Hampshire?
Wing show.
That's a
That's
good
north,
guess.
he said there's one higher in
East.
North Carolina.
Mount Mitchell.
Okay, interesting.
Okay. Well, thanks for the trivia question. We appreciate that. Thanks for your answers, everybody.
We all knew this one.
I had no clue. So tonight we're welcoming Walt Snyder. Walt's here to present us with the property maintenance code updates. You should have received that packet or that big PDF in your email. So Walt, we appreciate you being here tonight and the work that you put into Bellefonte enforcing the code. So you have the floor.
My pleasure. For those who I've not met directly, I'm Walt Schneider. I'm your building code official. The document that you have in front of you is the Center Region Rental Housing and Building Safety Code. This is, I'm going to break down the changes into really three main subcategories. Before I get into the subcategories, the first and foremost is the change in document name. The reason being is the previous document was the Center Region Building Safety and Property Maintenance Code, and what we're finding is folks were not able to find where the rental housing and the regulations both with rental housing and fire codes were housed. And so there was confusion, so the first thing we did at this round was we changed the name of the document to try and make it easier for tenants and landlords to be able to find the document and realize this is really the home document for that information. The second grouping of changes that are in the document, and we'll walk through the document, not line by line, but we'll stop anywhere you'd like. The second grouping is really a set of changes in order to keep this current with the national standards, and the state standards. So the Uniform Construction Code of Pennsylvania. Last thing we want is there to be a disagreement between this document and that document so that they butt heads. So a big chunk of those happen in Chapter 7, some rewriting, and as we go through the changes of this, we look at the national standards and we look at kind of all the state standards and try and make this as best we can match up so we have a uniform document and we don't have that, really that confusion is the bigger way to put it. The next set of changes is specifically Chapter 11. And Mr. Holderman and Mr. Stewart, have you spoken with Chief regarding Chapter 11 by any chance?
No.
Okay, so Chief, we're going to have you on the hot spot for a second.
Fire chief.
So Chapter 11, and Mr. Brackville will I'm sure recall, the discussions at public safety at the COG have been surrounding a lot of discussions with false alarms and the taxing of police, fire, and EMS on false alarms. And so we were charged by public safety to come up with a potential solution for the false alarm issue and how do we solve that. When we did our research, we found that there is actually a number of the municipalities, including Bellefonte, have ordinances in place that haven't been actively used to combat the false alarm problem. So there's actual documentation on the books, and Bellefonte's no different. It takes a slightly different format than state college boroughs, for example, but it's basically the same concept, that you get the first 3 free, and then after that, there's a fine situation. The one that's in State College Borough involves registering of alarms, and so there's an alarm license to have an alarm and be an alarm monitoring company, with the idea that that's an additional way to compel compliance, because the goal is not to get to the false alarm in the first place. So Chapter 11 is basically taking that alarm ordinance that's been sitting in the case of State College back into the 90s, and Bellefonte's is not much different from an age standpoint, putting it in the code again where we can be easily found, being able to work with it, and we would administer that program if the borough chooses to participate. So what it would involve is police notifying us by something simple as an email with some basic information. If they have a false alarm, we would follow up accordingly with the alarm holder, AKA the building owner, and follow through with notification if there's a problem with the alarm, obviously, because the code side, we would be dealing with that as well, working with them to correct the problem. If they don't correct the problem, then we go down the unfortunate road of the penalties included in the code. Similarly, the fire department would notify us of the same, and same thing with EMS. So our goal is to truly limit the taxation of time and energy for the needless response. Now, an
Excuse me,
example.
well, can I have a question?
Sure.
In an instance for active nature,
Not a problem.
storms,
Yep, not a problem.
okay.
So the ones that we would be dealing with, for example, is an example of false alarm for the fire side is somebody pulled pull station and there is no emergency.
Okay.
An example, another one is I have an alarm and the alarm system's on, I have a contractor in doing work, they're doing a lot of dust production and so on, they have the ability to call the alarm purveyor, put it on test, they just don't bother. And the fire department and police have to respond to a false alarm. An additional one from a police standpoint is somebody has a security alarm, isn't maintaining it, and gets false alarms. You get dispatched, show up, and there's absolutely no problems whatsoever and no reason why it would go off. So the goal isn't, again, the reason why we have, I call it the 3 free, is the goal is to really not have the false alarms, but we don't want to find anybody. We want them just to fix the alarm system so they work properly.
Or
So-
teach the people who are using the security alarm.
Correct.
How to use it.
Yes, yeah, so, and it may be education on a user standpoint, it might be a maintenance standpoint, there's all kinds of possible options as to how we would deal with them. But the goal isn't to go out and find somebody, the goal is really to get compliance.
What about medical alarms? Sometimes we get a lot of medical alarms, and they're user error usually.
Well, and again, the first 3 that a person does in a year, and it's not 3 lifetime, it's 3 in a year. But the goal is for us to come out then and have education with them and make them aware of the problem. So that's truly our goal. So if the borough chooses to participate in that chapter, that's, really what that's about.
So let me ask you a question.
Sure.
You know that this has happened with our water treatment plant. We get lots of birds
Mm-hmm.
and all flying, and false alarms have gone off there in the past.
Mm-hmm.
And we know that's happening.
Mhm.
Try to fix it, it doesn't get fixed, whether it's there or anywhere else. How is that handled?
Again, we work with them the first 3, and if they just are ignoring the problem, then we go down one road. And I'll give you an example of a building you all know very, very well. There was a group in Bellefonte that was known as Trinity Investments, and they had a small building up the street, 301 North Spring Street, you may know it. If you go into 301 North Spring Street, there is a skylight in the middle of the second floor, and it's absolutely gorgeous. When you look up through the skylight, you'll see a ladder that reaches to the east, and at the top of the ladder is a smoke detector.
We have a name for that ladder. It's called Julie's ladder.
Really? Wow. So during the previous ownership, and while I was chief of the Logans at the time, we started, we had nuisance alarms there long even before that on a regular basis because they didn't clean the alarm. We finally worked with it. When I was chief at the Logans, I worked with the ownership and kind of said, look, we got to have somebody come in and clean this on a regular basis. We're wasting resources, and we were able to get rid of that problem. Another problem that the Bellefonte Fire Department responded to, it's not in the borough, but was a building up in the industrial park behind Sheets. And they did sintering of metals. So very hot process. There were furnaces in the room, and their heat detection was becoming fatigued after time. So it would go very hot multiple times. And in fact, the straw that broke the back basically was we had a dispatch for an automatic fire alarm in the middle of the night one night. This taxes the resources to the point where the volunteers weren't getting out of bed to go for an automatic fire alarm. Myself and one other person got out of bed, responded in. The key holder for the building had told Center County not to have us respond in, just to cancel us, that it's a false alarm, and just not respond. We responded in anyway. They indicated they weren't coming out to the building, and when we got there, the windows were basically banked down with smoke in the building. It was a real alarm. But the nature of false alarms is it's the crying wolf piece. In that case, again, we worked with the ownership of the building after that to get on a cycle of replacing that alarm. So our goal is education and work with somebody to come up with solutions they may not be looking at, to be able to see if, and maybe there's a problem with the alarm itself, maybe it's a problem with how it was installed, but to work with them to try and educate them and get around that piece. And we have actually one person in the agency that we're going to be dedicating as predominantly the one that is going to be dealing with this. That's Jeff Martin. Jeff's a former chief at the Alpha, so he's very familiar with this. He's a fire and life safety inspector for us and has been for a number of years. And he and myself will be working directly with this program to try and, again, work with building owners. Our goal is to limit the amount of alarms and be able to free up those resources when we need them. So again, it's up to you as to if you choose to participate in this or not, but it's something that is there as a resource. The last grouping of changes, and then I'll start kind of walking through this, is we had a number of tenants' rights groups reach out to us and ask for inclusion of things in the code because of issues that they've seen with landlords against tenants. So the first of those, if we go to Chapter 1 of the code, is 101.6, and it's labeled tenants' rights. And again, just like any other part of this code, we have provisions, and the borough has done some things to adjust things in previous adoptions. We can do the same thing here. This set of pieces that were put in place were at their request, and this is really providing some rights for a tenant against a landlord, only in the fact that a landlord, for example, can't just raise the rent on the day before the lease gets signed on an existing rental. They have to give them notice. A landlord can't refuse to renew a lease for somebody for no reason. There's a whole bunch of reasons here that would allow them to do that, but they wouldn't just be able to say, nope, sorry, I don't like you, exactly, I don't like you, I don't want you here, get out. If they if the landlord can show that they've been destructive, if the landlord can show that they haven't been paying their bills, those kinds of things, there are all options in here to justify not renewing a lease, but you can't just do it at the whim and say, you know, I'm not interested. And so those are in 101.6. And by the way, I think we had mentioned in the email, anything that's a change is in red in the document.
I have two questions on that section.
Sure.
The first one is that very first line after it says an exemption, any bona fide transfer title incident to the sale of premises.
Yes.
And so my question is, does this mean that this whole new section on tenants' rights does not go into effect until a rental property is sold?
No. What we're talking about there is the exemption is if you're exempt from this if you sell the property. So if you choose to sell the property,
Okay.
you know, you're not required to continue on with this if you sell so an example is if you have a rental property here in the borough and you sell it to Mr. Brackbill, that is a bona fide bill of sale and gives you an exemption to this. Mr. Brackbill's not having to comply with continuing to rent to your tenant except for the duration of the lease, as provided by Pennsylvania tenant landlord law.
Okay, and then the second one is lease bifurcation.
Yes.
And it's dealing with domestic violence
Yes.
Victims. And it says that if any tenant wishes to inhabit the leased premises after early termination or bifurcation, a new lease with the owner must be executed. My question is, does this mean that if the lease is bifurcated and the survivor wants to remain, can the owner change anything else in the lease with the current protected tenant other than who is listed on the lease for the remaining duration of the original lease?
Our read is no. So it's really just changing the name on the
names on
lease to a new lease.
Okay, that to me is unclear, and I think it might need to be cleared up a little bit.
This went through legal, and
Okay.
we kind of cleaned it up based on, and the same question was brought up.
Yeah.
And the language, the recommendation from legal was the language is kind of intentionally the way it is. This also came out of, the city of Philadelphia has had this in place and it's withstood quite a few years of challenges.
Okay.
So the language, I don't want to say is intentionally
Vague?
but again, we don't anticipate running into a problem with it, but we get into interpretation, then they go to an appeals board
Okay,
so.
I just want to make sure that that was the only thing.
I understand. Yep, but
They're
that's-
having dealt with domestic violence survivors for a very long time.
Yep, and that's the intent.
Yeah.
Any other questions on Chapter 1? Again, most of everything in Chapter 1's either updating based on that. There's also in 105.22, which is on page 8, is just clarifying inspection notice. One of the things we've done in here from an administrative standpoint is really try and clarify notice. Also, we indicate that notice can be given now via email because we're collecting emails. So if you provide us an email, I can notify you based on the email. Just trying to come into this century and how we're doing business. A lot of renumbering because of an add of a section. So you see a bunch of red marks on numbering. There's a bunch of red in Chapter 2. One thing I will note back in on, sorry, my apologies, on Chapter 1. In 112.9, you'll see that we clarified that any appeals of the appeals board go to county court. This is based on some case law that has come about since the last passage of this document. And basically, unless otherwise provided in the document, appeals go to Commonwealth courts versus coming to Borough Council, for example. In discussions, we felt that the case law was stronger by doing that than indicating that you would want the appeal coming here directly. So it goes to the appeals board, and then if they just choose to appeal the ruling of the appeals board is treated as an appeal in court. Chapter 2 is all definitions. Most of the definitions, again, surrounded the updating of Chapter 11. So, sure. So 17 to 24 is Chapter 2, and that's all definitions.
What we have here doesn't go that.
No, this was a more detailed change or addition. So
Yep.
we printed out just this instead of the 100+ page.
149 pages.
149
So I
pages.
just went to the,
Saving a tree.
Yeah.
At least.
So, based on the Board of Appeals, I did have one other question. It's
Sure.
in general, and I'm not sure this is actually for us or for you.
Mm-hmm.
There's been deletion on a couple of places where we would have appeals from the codes enforcement going to our local Board of Appeals. And it's changing this and deleting that entirely, it's not going to you all directly.
And that change actually was made about, I want to say about 9 months ago.
Okay.
When the inability for the borough to continue to staff the appeals board.
Right, and I
Um,
understand that,
yep.
but the question I have is, since if the Housing Board of Appeals has limited, what will our Board of Appeals handle other than the means of appeals and appeals for suspension of rental housing permits, which are the only two I found in here? What else would we be handling?
I don't think we're handling anything. We're
Oh.
going to go to their.
It all goes to
So
the center
we're going to
region.
get, so the zoning hearing board does not here to handle these at all,
No,
correct?
It's a separate.
Yep.
Okay,
separate
and the
animal.
housing board will disappear.
Yeah, I
Correct.
believe so, yeah.
Okay,
Correct.
okay, that's what I wanted to know. Thank you.
No, our pleasure. General requirements, again, mainly stay keeping up with what the national standards are. So, Chapter 4 starts on page 38. There's really very little significant changes in Chapter 4. The biggest change is something that doesn't affect Bellefonte, and that was State College Borough. Everybody has asked, and we let you know, State College Borough changed their, after discussions with HUD, they revoked, actually at the beginning of this year, Table 404.5.2 has been deleted, and that's their square footage table. So everybody's back to the minimum size of a bedroom is 70 square feet. And most everybody's running on table 404.51 or table 404.5. And that isn't being recommended to be changed. You know, it's worked, and there's been no discussion of changing that. Page 45 is Chapter 5. There's some statements of non-potable water reuse systems and abandonment of systems. Again, that's national language to make sure that we're keeping up with the code at a national level. As far as, this is more of a permanent system in a building,
Oh, okay,
as far as termination of the system.
okay.
The next change is in the end of Chapter 6 on page 51. And this change is, we have a similar one in Chapter 7. This is for carbon monoxide alarms. There's one also in Chapter 7 for smoke alarms. And this is all based on manufacturer's data telling us when the end of life is and clarifying that. So we're on the same page. And again, so people can find it as compared to finding the directions on the smoke detector or the carbon monoxide alarm that they put up 7 years ago and can't figure out what the heck's going on, we put it in here. So, again, Chapter 7 is really national language changes. We'd be happy to go over any. It's really mainly a reorganization of what was there into slightly different format, again, to match the national language. Jumping to Chapter 8, which starts on page 67. And the big change that I would point your attention to is on page 69. So page 69 is, there's a list of items that every owner has to notify a tenant of. So 803.3 has been in place for quite a few years now. And what we have is, we have a tenant notification document that we have on our website that landlords can download. We have a website that they can point to let the tenants know where to find all this information. Tiffany Baker from our office data mines the borough ordinances to make sure that we have all the correct citations for the borough ordinances on the website. So instead of handing stuff in print copy with people, handing them, as I always said, this is kind of like, I jokingly say, for those of us who've been around long enough to go to Shore's Auto Parts, remember the old books for all the parts manuals? I said, every rental housing, should have a set of those so we can put all this in it, right? They can't take it out and go anywhere. So in this day and age, we're putting it on a website. So if we go down through the list, pretty straightforward stuff as far as gives you information on recycling, gives you information on property maintenance, refuse, parking, weeds, and so on. We've updated and modified a couple of these. Number 11 is notification requirements, and we clarified that we need to give you 7 days notice to do the primary inspection of the property. We need to give you 1 day notice to do the reinspection. So an example is your smoke detector's down, we're gonna come back the next day and make sure you put it back up. Okay? So I only need to give you 1 day notice versus 7 to do that. 13, notice of regulations regarding interior furniture and possible penalties. So we have the interior furniture requirements where you're not allowed to take your couch out of the living room and put it in the side yard because you may bring back in rodents and pests back into the house. The landlord needs to notify you of those. It's not fair, hey, I moved into town, I didn't know that, and so I wanted to take my easy chair outside. So this requires that the landlord's gonna give you notification. Again, we're gonna provide that information, they get something signed saying they notified you, here's the website to go to. 15 is notice of information regarding tenants' rights as published by the municipality. That document is a Penn State generated document, and it states tenants' rights, and it's a document that they've put together, but again, we would put it on behalf of the municipalities. 16 is information regarding fire safety as published by the municipality. An example of this is one of the things we're working up is hoverboards and lithium-ion battery devices and the limitations on how you should charge them. The fact that you shouldn't stick 5 of them in, on a block and then plug it into the wall and expect a good thing to happen. The city of Harrisburg's had some real catastrophes because of this. But that gives us a very generic statement that we can put that on there, and again, notice will be given. 17 is a big one. So, and I want to point you to this, and I want to talk through it for a couple of minutes. 17 is about truly understanding the cost of renting and the cost of what it costs to rent a given apartment building. So you rent the apartment building, let's say you rent a single family home for $2,000 a month. The code is going to dictate that you have to maintain the temperature between October and May at a given level in the in the mid 60s in that building. The building itself is a wind tunnel, has no insulation, and is truly heated using electricity. So you rent it for $2,000 a month and you find out that your electric bills in January are $900 a month. And then you go, I can't afford to do this. But the landlord says, look, to protect my building, you have to maintain the temperature at 65 degrees. You don't have a choice. Go in and turn up the thermostat. So this has been put in to try and help combat that. So what it is it's a requirement that the landlord, and we know this is going to take 2 years to build out, all right? So the first piece of it is the landlord is going to have to provide information regarding the previous 2 years of utility bills, if the tenant is required to pay them. If the landlord's paying them, we don't care. The tenant, it's not a surprise to the tenant. But if the tenant's expected to pay them, the landlord's gonna have to provide 2 years of back data so they understand the cost of renting. Now, there's a problem. If you put the electric bill in your name, the landlord can't get the cost of the electric bill. West Penn Power, we verified with West Penn Power, they will not turn over. They will tell you the kilowatt usage, but they will not tell anybody whose name is not on the account actually what the bill was. So this requires, in return, the tenant within 60 days of paying the bill needs to, and they can do something as simple as an email, Mr. Landlord, my bill for June for electricity was $60. It's something as simple as that. But they just need to notify the landlord as to the cost of the utilities that they are paying. So the landlord can turn that information over to prospective tenants before they lease the property. So that's kind of a different one. But again, the idea is we get phone calls from folks, and in reality, it's in all the municipalities that have the document in hand. We get complaints at any given time about, I can't afford to keep my heat on this high because I didn't know it was going to cost this much. So we want them to be aware. We know we're going to have to work with both tenants and landlords over the first couple of years to start building this database. But the goal is so that we can, again, notify folks so they understand really what the cost of living there is.
I understand toward the end of last holiday season, let's say December, Christmas, people turned their thermostats down. And they came back to wet floors, frozen pipes. I think it happened in a couple of apartments up there.
Yeah, and a lot of landlords will go in, like especially if you know that the tenant, like if they're student tenants, a lot of the landlords will go in and turn the heat back up. And they'll proactively do that to make sure they're not getting damage. But again, the students turn it down because they're trying to save money. And so the goal here is, look, there's a true cost to this. Just realize you're going to have to expect to be paying this.
So, full disclosure, while I'm a landlord.
Yes.
And does that have to be in the lease agreement?
No, because it's in the code.
Okay. So
And-
that I would have to produce the code that states that. Some tenants may resist doing that.
Sure.
And what's my leverage to make sure that it gets done?
So the first piece is, this is in the notification piece, and it notifies both ways. So my recommendation is, yes, it should be in the lease, but I can't, and not forcing you to, that's the best practice, is to put it in the lease. You can make a photocopy of this one page, highlight it,
Yeah.
and hand it to them and say, look, within 60 days. And the great part about it is, if you want to limit how much interaction has to happen, you say, look, every other month, email me what the electric bills were or what the gas bills were. And just send me an email. World's pretty good. We find that the more your tenants and you interact, the more positive it is, because oddly enough, if your tenant knows you and knows you care, they don't want to destroy your property. And so they know you're engaged. And this is, we feel, is another way of, again, keeping that communication open. That I've talked to one landlord, their statement is I can set up a reminder on my email to send my tenants an email saying, hey, what was your electric bill? So there's different strategies of getting it, but
I'm thinking, put it in the lease, and as you suggested, a copy of this page highlighted to support what's in the lease.
exactly.
Yeah. Okay, thanks.
But yeah, our goal is really,
I agree.
the last thing we want is somebody who's leasing a property who can't afford to do this and then is almost defaulting, but then they get into, well, you can't kick me out, and they're asking for resources, where up front we go, look, this is going to be expensive for you to lease.
Most conscientious tenants ask,
Yes.
what sort of utility fees am I looking at most? But, yeah, it's fine. Good. Thanks.
So, and the other one that's kind of a little funny on this page is 803.5, and I point it out only because it's a little funny. We've gotten complaints, so if you don't live within 25 air miles, you appoint a person in charge who does live within 25 air miles to deal with your property if we have an issue. We've had owners complain that the person in charge that they appointed doesn't notify them of anything. So we actually put in the code that the person in charge has to notify the property owner. Again, a little tongue in cheek, but it's all good. When we go through this, 806.2.3 is part of that point system that we talked about briefly earlier.
Okay.
Currently, the borough doesn't track points. You adopt the system, but you don't track them currently. This is a Protection for Victims of Abuse or Crimes Act statement, and that is that if you have a victim who lives in the property, so they're the tenant, and there is a crime against them on the property, that there will be no points assigned for the crime.
To that person.
The points don't get assigned to the person, they
And
get
you can't
assigned to the
evict the person.
property.
Right.
So we get into a little quirkiness if we're talking about two people that actually live on the property.
Yes.
But and quite honestly, we'd still prefer to protect the victim in the default. But this means you can't start accumulating points because somebody broke into your house, even though the crime happened on the property. Really, as we go through, the rest of this is administrative stuff until we get to Chapter 9, which is the updating of the fire code for the administrative side. We spoke with Mr. Stewart, Mr. Haldeman about Appendix B, the fire flow requirements. Did you look at those and have any heartburn? Because it'd be for only new buildings.
Well, we would want to get an opinion. I mean, my unprofessional opinion, I don't think is substantial, but.
Well, I can tell you that College Township has looked at it. They don't have any heartburn.
Okay.
And State College Borough Water Authority also has looked at it. Brian did an extensive look at it.
Okay.
Had no heartburn.
Okay.
And then there's always the ability to appeal.
Okay.
So we kind of all said regionally, we feel pretty comfortable about that.
We'll let you know.
Okay.
We can take a look at it and let you know.
Sure. So other than that, that is basically the document. I'd be happy to answer any other questions. I know I'm a couple minutes beyond my half an hour.
It was 15 minutes.
Oh, my apologies.
Well, thanks for the thorough, great.
So
It's
what
all good.
what I would ask is, need some feedback from the borough as to if there's anything you take exception to. Your previous ordinance is in the back. At this point, we would anticipate following the same basis of the previous ordinance, and that you would adopt everything other than what you previously exempted or modified. We are happy to build the ordinance and draft the ordinance for you. Also happy to come back to answer any other questions if you may have on this. Regionally, we're looking at an August 1 go live on the document.
Okay. That sounds
All right,
reasonable.
yes.
Just one question, there's no changes, I just don't understand what it was talking about. Is it Appendix A boarding standard? What is that?
So we use that only in oddball extreme cases. Basically, an example is you have a fire, and I have something that I can point to that's it's not a requirement because it's an appendix and it hasn't been legally required, but I can point a contractor to a standard on how to board up a building and secure a building to make sure that we don't have problems with people vandalizing buildings.
Okay.
Any other questions for Walt? Thank you, Walt.
No, thank you.
Yes.
And just let me know if you would like me back and to explain anything, and we'll start drafting based on the
Okay.
previous document, but if there's any additional changes, please let me know.
Why don't you go ahead and send us a draft of your ordinance?
No problem.
We'll use.
We'll be doing that. I'll make sure you have it by the end of the week.
Okay, thank you.
Great.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you,
Walt.
everybody. Take care.
Thank you very much.
Here.
What do I do with my agenda? Okay. The other one, sorry.
Parking?
Parking ordinance amendments. We're gonna go through this as quickly as we can.
I don't know if we'll get through all of it, but we got to looking. This started with our discussions to update the parking ordinance.
Yep.
related to the electric vehicle charging station fees. And we got to looking at the existing ordinance that's in play and found that there was quite a few wordings or actual paragraphs that really are outdated. So we highlighted them and we wanted to walk through what's here in the draft and give you a flavor for what we were looking at, and get your thoughts on what we should take out and modify as we work towards a final draft. So if you have it, and I know some of you have it on your computer, so I'm gonna reference titles or article sections or section numbers. Like for example, it starts at 530-1, has some definitions. So I'll try to reference that and not use page numbers because some of you are looking at computers. So again, it's called Chapter 530 of our codified ordinances. And some of the first, for example, 530-7, at the end of that begins Article 2, and it says one-way streets, stop intersections, and play highways. Sometime in the past, there was play highways.
1964.
I knew some of you would know this.
It says in here.
Well, there's a whole paragraph, but anyway, the first highlight was, do we want to consider taking the words "and play highways" out of that title? So keep that in mind, because later on, again, there's a whole paragraph. We highlighted.
Being added instead of subtracted.
Well, it's up for discussion. I was just looking for the majority. So 530-8 one-way streets. Section A starts to list some. What we were trying to do with some of the highlights is go away from store names, bank names, what have you, and leave it more generic, like street names. So for example, the first Academy Lane says name a street, or name a street Academy Lane, and then over on the other end of the column at limits, it mentions Brack Bill's Alley.
Where's that?
It's behind Brack Bill's store.
I thought it was. Still not mine.
Behind the VFW.
I'm going to steal that sign, by the way, if it's going.
Anyway, that's what we're talking
I'm going to
about.
switch it to Badger.
We want to, update and take out names like that. So I'm just looking here, or like for example, we saw North Lot instead of what we used to call it. I'm not sure, but A or D. We used, yes. So we tried to clarify some of those wordings where we did here a couple years ago go with north, south, and west lots. So a couple other, terminus at the Knights of Columbus parking lot. We'll just take off that end and leave it at the end of Water Street and something like that. Water Street and Stony Batter or what have you. So let me just flip the page, or my page here. It lists a lot of streets, so there's really literally pages of street names.
You're down
which
to
all,
530-11.
yeah, they all look pretty good. We didn't see anything.
Play highways.
Okay. Yeah, so, this is something for whether it's something you'd even conceive of or think of, or, should we get a legal opinion because of liability? Things are much different today than they were back in the 1960s or what have you. But, we haven't shut down a street for snow.
You do it not for snowboarding, but you do it every spring for the children's fair.
Yeah,
That's what I was thinking of when
No.
I saw this.
No,
play
this
highway.
is actual sled riding, so,
Okay.
it actually says that's why it's being shut down. You can't drive on it, you can't park on it.
I can remember
Yeah.
shutting down the alley beside our house. Borough came and put barriers
Yeah.
up.
I think we should leave it in so Buddy can shut it down when we have some snow and let the kids
When
play.
think we
That
ever
would be
have it
fun.
again?
I would recommend getting some legal advice about the liability. Check with your insurance company.
If they didn't shut it down, we'd bail snowballs. And that's when the guy was shoveling the ashes out of the back of the truck into that hop, You don't remember those
No,
days?
no, everything sounds like outdated. Okay, so.
Going on?
Yes. 530-12, traffic signals at certain intersections. We found that we didn't have listed a couple intersections. We had Bishop Street and Parkview Boulevard, which will be
Yeah.
going online.
I
So
saw
we-
that. Yeah.
And then Water Street and Lamb was added, recent history. I think Bishop and Street and Wilson, I think maybe we added those two, or Bishop Street and School were added. So we're flipping over to the same section, but F, let me see here. Yeah,
Mhm.
530-13F. I wanted to mention a couple things. F relates to the commercial loading, unloading zones, and I bring that up just for you to give some thought to the Dollar General area on South Spring Street, because we're
Mhm.
gonna do a streetscape project, and we want to consider, some type of park, unloading time frame. Now, so if F kind of alludes that we can do it, just kind of says we can do it. Then later on in here, there's another paragraph that really has a time that we put in as a suggestion. So I just want to highlight, that's why we highlighted it, because we know we were talking about Dollar General and the loading, unloading issue over there. There's a couple other highlights that we're checking into. The Railroad Street Bridge under C, under 530-14, that bridge is being reconstructed, or it's in the process, through that PennDOT, county/PennDOT/borough project. And, here probably it'll go to bid pretty soon, and eventually it'll probably have a new weight limit. So there's a question there. Related to that, 530-16 has maximum weights related to motor carriers. Those weights and things, Gabby in Sean's office was going to check to see if they're still accurate. They're still, makes sense.
This question, real quick, going back to the dollar store.
Sure.
Is it possible if we put signage out that the signage is on the side of the storefront, so they're not having to cross that
Yes.
street? Okay.
Yeah, many cases, even in the current ordinance, if you're talking about the loading zones and so on, yeah, they'll identify like the north side of High Street, such and such block. So we would do something similar. Jumping in here. Now here, a couple years ago, we updated right around 530-18 about the parking on certain streets prohibited related to large vehicles. So 530-20, it says this article shall not apply to motor homes, motor buses, school buses, or those motor carriers making local delivery. So I'm not sure that should stay as is, because we have this newer sections that relate to large vehicles being parked on streets. So
I think you're correct that both motorhomes and motor buses need to be removed
Yes.
from there.
So that's again why we highlighted that. 530-29 has a couple of things that are of concern or have issues. It talks about only the central business district. We now have a waterfront business district, and it talks about petacycles, which I don't think is defined, but I'm assuming that's a bicycle. Anyway, it talks about you're not allowed to ride a bicycle in the central business district. That doesn't say that. I
No.
don't see that anywhere. Has three sections, A, B, C. I didn't see anywhere where it's mentioned sidewalks.
It does not.
But I think the state law allows bicycles on the street. They don't allow them on the sidewalks.
Yes.
And maybe that's what needs to be clarified
Yeah.
here. And I would change it to bicycles.
Same here, but that's what I'm just saying, it didn't read right, it didn't read like, it needs some updating,
So
so.
there are some, I don't know if you want to call them pedal cycles or not, but they're driven by electric motors, and they're on, you see them on the sidewalks.
They're becoming more popular.
Yeah.
Yeah, so it's something we want to look at, see if we can, see what some of the other boroughs have done, and update this section probably.
That one, scooters.
Yes, scooters, and we
Oh, and those funny little delivery cars that we talked about 2 years ago.
might as well
So
stick it in there.
Joanne, they're coming any day now.
I don't ever expect them here in town, but we went through a whole.
Okay, let's move on.
Yeah, no, wait.
Yeah.
Let's see here, jumping 530-38 is the loading and unloading zones. So my notes are that we would, look at adding something about Spring Street on the west side, south of, the location would be the south of Spring Street, or south of High Street, I guess I should have there. But anyway, we can add that and go into more detail. Now, what we did, we highlighted or added a sentence where the delivery times would be 5 a.m. to 8 a.m., 7 days a week. Now, we haven't researched that or know if that's
Right.
practical or anything, but it's just a
Jumping
placeholder.
off point, yeah.
Placeholder. at
I
this
think at this point, once the street's done and corrected down here, they're gonna have less traffic coming out around the dollar store. That's what you're talking about.
That could be, but the deliveries, we've seen trucks on one side of the road and one on the other
At the same time, and it's a mess.
I know, they gotta get in line.
When we do our streetscape, the road's gonna be even narrower,
Mhm.
so something we have to address. The meter coloring has, just need a few words here and
Where
there.
are you at now?
I'm at 530-51,
Can we back up to 530-46?
sure.
Hold on, let me go down to it.
I seem to be missing that.
Yeah, I do.
Number
40,
46. Oh,
45.
okay, I see. I might have it out of,
Is
Same.
parking and parking lots north, south, and west limited?
okay.
It says, between the hours of 10:30 PM and 6 AM, no person shall park any vehicle in these lots unless they have a permit. I think because of what we did with the parking, electric vehicle parking things, we need to add something like, or are parked at and paying for electric vehicle charging next to the electric vehicle charging stations.
I'm with you.
Because, and the reason I'm saying that is because below that, we do clearly state that, but if that's not in that section, then it conflicts with the other part.
I'm with you 100%. That's why we highlighted it. It needs updated.
Yeah.
It actually restricts driving through the lots and only speaks to the north lot. And just so it needs updated. So, because we know people drive through, they have permits, they might be charging a vehicle, so it needs updated.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm not sure how I got to 530-51, but basically, the metering, it talks about at 530-51B, anyway, says 15-minute parking designated by gold-colored meters.
We don't have those anymore.
Well, we have some, but it should be 15-minute maximum parking.
Okay.
Because the silver meters, the gray meters are also 15-minute meters. But their wording should be 2-hour maximum parking. Because technically you're supposed to move out of the space after 2 hours, or you get a ticket for staying beyond the 2 hours.
So basic here, 530-51, this was another question. Most places you've put in this according to the borough's fee schedule. I think we need to look through the whole ordinance. In some places, we actually have fees listed. I think
Yeah.
that needs to go.
We're with you. You need all fees as much as
Outta here.
possible should be moved out. Now, unless, like the district justice says, something, a fine, or that's to be the only exception, but every training tells you get them out, put them in a fee schedule so you can update them easily.
So we don't have to redo the
Yes.
ordinance every time.
530-36 It talks about cab stands, bus loading, unloading areas, physicians' parking areas. You know, again, I highlighted the whole section, 36, thinking that could probably come out. It's something we don't use anymore, we don't have anymore. You know,
Doesn't that deal with like the CATA bus stops?
no, I don't think so. I think it talks about cab stands, bus loading and unloading. Like there used to be, that's not a CATA bus stop. There used to be actual buses that came in, you know, like the Greyhound bus that was like a terminal.
They went to
Yeah.
Parrish's Apothecary.
Yeah, yeah, or something like that.
It's a bus stop.
If we have a situation like that, you know, then I think maybe the ordinance would be relevant, but we don't have any of that currently.
Okay.
But it's just a suggestion. We just thought that maybe it needs, you know, updated at some extent. In 530-40, there's some parking restrictions. Talks about area, parking restrictions and several spaces like around the courthouse annex. And so all we want to do is just see if we're missing anything in spaces that we reserve, like in front of the courthouse, on Allegheny, beside the courthouse, what have you. We just want to make sure it's still accurate. And then I think this might be one of the sections. Yeah, we added the large vehicle section, which starts at 530-41. It's restrictions on parking and storing of large vehicles. So the first part of that section is definitions, and then we get into letter C. Then I highlighted 4 and 5. I just wanted to make, it talks about the parking of the RVs, which again, we used other terms, campers or something, but here we're talking about RVs. Out-of-town visitors. I know in the last 2 years, there's been a little bit of discussion from time to time. Does this need tweaked a little bit? You know, a person coming in to town, having to get a permit, should we say, 3 days is enough, or 3 days grace period? Give it some thought. All I'm saying is, it'd be nice if we did one amendment, one advertisement for all the amendments, so we highlighted it for you to think about it. Now would be a good time to correct it, or amend it, or update it, if you want to. And we talked about this a moment ago. I jumped to 530-43, violations and penalties. We have some values in here, Schedule F. We highlighted them thinking they should be taken out and put in the fee schedule.
There's a couple that are missed here, but yeah.
Yeah, but that the idea is it's time to move them over to the fee schedule. General regulations, 530-46. We were just looking at, we have kiosks, we have meter poles, so we're just trying to capture everything. I think we're pretty good. There's just a couple
What's
notes.
a curbstone?
I don't know what a curbstone is. I think maybe that's why I highlighted it.
What is that, Ken? Curbstone.
Trivia question.
Chief, what's a curbstone?
After the parking,
Yes.
Yes?
concrete, it looks like a curb, and it has 2 pieces of rebar each side.
Okay.
Down in
Well,
front of the stall, I think.
Oh, I didn't know that's what they were called. Okay. Parking lot, I'm sorry, 530-46, parking and parking lots, and just correcting the names, north, south, west, which is in here. The time of the hours of, this is where it talks about, I think you can't drive through, or if, just it needs cleaned up a little bit. So we highlighted 47 as well, that needs some correcting or cleaning up. Or actually, I highlighted consider deleting altogether that first paragraph of 53-47. But, give it some thought here. Then again, some of the other sections, let me see here. Parking meters, 530-51, charges and restrictions. And we do reference a fee schedule, but obviously there's still some fees in here. And then 530-53 is another issue that's come up, and we said we would revisit, is the 8 a.m. to 8 p.m. parking enforcement timeframes, Monday through Friday. And of course, Saturday it's 9 to noon. We highlighted it again because now would be a good time. If we're going to make any amendments or change anything, we might as well do it all in one shot.
Yeah.
So we said around June we would revisit it. So, and we all we want to do is explain. Some of the council members were here, involved when we went to 8 p.m. and we just wanted a chance to give you the rationale for that process or that change at that time.
We got 7:30 right now, just so you
Okay.
know.
I know we're running short on time, but anyway, I want you to think about that. It'd be nice to get everything worded correctly and then, again, advertise one time and do all the amendments. And then section 530-57, we have reference about the electric vehicles. And then the same section, 530-57, we have 3 rough draft paragraphs of what we would say in the ordinance related to people using charging stations to charge electric vehicle, and how the fee would work, and how the parking space would work.
So these are 3 alternatives for the same.
Yes, and
Okay.
they're not even 100% either one. They're just around some, staff thoughts on how we word it, because, again, we're trying to lessen confusion. We have to word it in the ordinance first, and then word it on a sign second, and have a driver understand what we're saying, so.
My first thing is the first version, I think we shouldn't do, because you've got a value for the parking, but we may change that.
That's
So-
true, that's
So
true.
I would just,
I'm just saying, values were just thoughts. We can easily put that in a fee schedule.
right, that's,
Yes. But anyway, we're like Randy and Doug are saying, we're running out of time, so look at that, give that some thought. I think that's the majority of it. Like the last 78, section 78 was another fee. We'll move over to the fee schedule.
So we should read through this again.
Yes,
Individually.
yes.
Make recommendations
Yeah,
for
just,
our next work
yeah,
session.
let us know if things, obviously, we'll probably have another round at least at a work session, try to go towards a crafting of a draft that you would eventually vote on for the amendments.
Yeah. Okay. We're gonna have to move on to our business meeting.
Yes, yeah.
So we'll keep the Potter Street speeding for the next work session, their next meeting. And there are 2 other items that are
Yes.
going to be on the work session, so we're getting pretty well booked
Yes.
for that. In the meantime, are you ready for that? Okay, I'd like to call the Bellefonte Borough Council business meeting for Wednesday, June 7th to order. So first, I'd like to have a pledge of allegiance and a moment of silence. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Roll call.
Mr. Stewart, could I have the roll call, please?
Certainly. Mr. Bernier?
Here.
Mr. Brackbill?
Here.
Ms. Cleaton? Ms. Dan,
Here.
Mr. Johnson,
Present?
Ms. McKean, Ms. Purnell,
Here.
Ms. Sedgwick,
Here.
Ms. Tosti Vasey,
I'm here.
Mayor Johnson.
Here.
Great, thank you, Mr. Stewart.
Sure.
In accordance with Act 65 of 2021, if a matter is not on the agenda, council cannot take official action on it with some exceptions. The council can act on matters relating to potential or real emergencies. Council may add a matter of agency business to its agenda through a majority vote. The council should state the reason why the action item is being added to the agenda. Council may vote to add an action item to the agenda. Is there any additions to the agenda tonight? Hearing none, we'll move on to public comment. Public comment period is for oral comments regarding any action items listed on the meeting agenda or any comments in general. No deliberations will be entered into by council at this time. Please sign in, come to the podium at the appropriate time, state your name and address and which item you are speaking about. Please limit your comments to 3 minutes. Is there anybody from the audience that would like to come to the podium for public comment? Chris, how are you doing this evening?
Good,
Welcome.
thank you. I'm Chris Morelli, 162 East Curtin Street. Please excuse my address, I just got back into town. But I wanted to just comment quickly on two things. One, Mayor Johnson had a little hot dog luncheon a few weeks ago downtown, and Chief Weaver and himself and 2 volunteers from Giant Supermarkets. And they also donated all the food, some 300 plus hot dogs, chips and waters. An incredible community event, and really everyone that came up and got some lunch was extremely appreciative. I've never seen that in any group of 300 people or whatever. Everyone, and I was very impressed, and thanks for allowing me to participate a bit.
Absolutely.
They were out there 4 hours, Chief Weaver and the other volunteers, so it was really, really nice.
Chris, thank you. You were a huge help as well.
Yes, sir, thank you, my pleasure.
Appreciate it.
Just, there's a couple of issues, or a couple of items on the HARB on this agenda. One particularly, 438 Curtin Street, it's an application for a new roof. And the applicants did a lot of hard work and research, putting their application together, their presentation together. Gina did a lot of hard work presenting it to the HARB. It took them 2 meetings, the first meeting they went through everything. They wanted some extra information, I believe a sample of the roofing, and so they had to wait for the following meeting, and the roof's leaking. So I hope you guys approve it tonight, and I think it's going to look great. They've done some other improvements to their house since they've been here in the community, and this improvement will really look good with the architecture of the house and the neighborhood. So I'd appreciate it if you would approve that along with the other applicants. Thank you, sir.
Are there any others who would like to make a public comment? This is the time during the business meeting that anybody from the public that would like to make a comment, this is the time when you would, if you choose to do that, this is the time to come to the podium and make any comments.
It could be a non-agenda item too, right?
I beg your pardon?
It could be a non-agenda item too.
Yes.
Yeah. Thanks, Chris. Okay. Okay, we'll move on then to communications. Mr. Stewart?
Sure. The first one is just a notice that the county has begun their 2023 West Nile virus program. They're looking for mosquitoes, primarily mosquito breeding areas. They're recommending, of course they have a program, but they're recommending, try to eliminate areas of standing water around your properties if you would happen to have any. But they have a program, they're just trying to track mosquitoes and try to stop any spread of any viruses through that method.
I have a question
Sure.
on that. In the past, if there are people with chemical sensitivities,
Mhm.
They could call in advance to make sure
Yeah.
that whoever is doing the spraying
Yes.
contacted those families so they can keep their windows closed while it's happening?
Yes,
Can you tell the public who it is they need to call
Yes.
to make that happen?
yes, it's a county planning office of Center County government.
Thank
That
you.
there's a West Nile virus coordinator person, but if you call the planning office of the Center County government, they can help process that information.
Thank you.
Sure.
John,
Yes.
real quick, I know we talked about it over
Yes.
this long weekend that we had. but,
Yes.
Well, I just want to make a motion that we go ahead and send a letter to the owners of the new
There's a
water car wash on the
storm
side
management
road.
pond that may have an issue.
Yeah, if you could just ask
Yeah.
them to monitor that and,
We'll
you
do
know,
that.
put the, I guess, little packs and things in there that'll take care of the
Yeah,
mosquitoes.
chlorine or whatever they use.
I don't think we need a motion, but we can just ask the administration to do that.
Well, I'm
Or do
told
you want a
sometimes I
motion?
need a motion and sometimes don't do it. I'd rather make the motion and have council vote on it.
Well, thank you for that, because I've had a couple people reach out to me about that as well, so thank you for bringing that up.
Okay, there's a motion, is there a second to
I
Rena?
don't think we can, a point of order, because
Oh, that's right, yeah.
we can't do a motion. We can administratively handle that,
Yes.
because we
Okay,
didn't.
okay, that's good, yeah. I think she's correct in.
It wasn't an action
We didn't
item,
have an
yes.
action item.
Yeah.
But I can follow up
Yeah,
and let you
All
know,
right.
yes.
yeah, Randy, well,
All right.
Yeah.
by the way, Joanne, that contact person is Wayne Loshberger,
That's right.
Center County West Nile Virus Program Coordinator. And his cell phone number is 814-404-4012.
Thank you.
In your packet, just in case you want,
Yeah.
on the page 2, his email address is there.
I asked that so that the
Sure.
public would know that
Yes.
as well.
Thank you
Okay.
very much, thanks.
Well, yeah, good. Anything else? What do we have?
Yes. Next item, under communications, we found out or saw that Bellefonte was listed in, it's called the 8 Cutest Small Towns in Pennsylvania in an article. The article was published on the website of worldatlas.com. Just want you to know that. It's always nice to have recognition for the community. And then lastly, as far as written communications, we have the Bellefonte Environmental Advisory Board meeting minutes and notes from March through May of this year.
I'd like to make a couple additions, this is for the public. They were put, usually this would have happened at the second meeting of the month, but because there are 2 educational programs that are happening, one of them is tomorrow, I had requested that this be placed on the agenda this evening, and Alyssa put it under communications. Tomorrow, June 8th, the last Energy Biz program will be held from 4 to 5 p.m. at the Eric J. Barron Innovation Hub on room 612 in State College. This program will focus on energy efficiencies for your businesses, your nonprofit, or government buildings. The second one is a brand new one, and I just got this hot off the press, half hour before council meeting started. It's a program to do backyard composting of yard and plant food waste. It's going to be held from 10 to 11 a.m. at the Children's Garden behind the Historic Library. And the training is going to be conducted by Karen Brewster, who's a Master Gardener volunteer with Penn State Extension. Gay Dunn has been the one who's been organizing this. She's going to putting these flyers around town. She is also sending this flyer to Alyssa, and we'd like, if possible, have it put on the website and on our scrolling screen. And finally, the presentation on the sustainability survey will be done by Deb during the work session on June 20th.
On the
Anything else?
consent agenda.
Yep. Moving on to the consent agenda. The items listed on the consent agenda are considered to be routine and will be acted upon by a single motion. There will be no separate discussion on these items unless a member of council requests specific items be removed for a separate action. So
Make a
is there
motion
any,
to, I make a motion to approve the items listed on the consent agenda as shown,
as presented?
presented, shown.
Okay.
Second that.
Second?
Could I remove the budget versus actual and the budget versus actual for summary? I just have a couple questions. It won't change my vote.
Budget versus actual for April 2023?
Yeah, and the summary. And they're
Okay.
just two questions, and it's,
Okay.
that won't affect the vote, but
Well, if
they
it
have,
doesn't affect the vote, why would you need to remove it? Couldn't you just do
because
that in
I think it's,
discussion?
because you don't have discussion on the consent.
Oh, all right.
Okay, so we are going to remove budget versus actual 2023 and budget versus actual summary April 23.
Mhm.
Those in favor of the motion that are not removed, roll call, we'll do a roll call vote.
Mr. Bernier?
Yes.
Mr. Brockville?
Yes.
Ms. Clayton?
Yes.
Ms. Dan?
Yes.
Mr. Johnson?
Yes.
Ms. McKean?
I think she said yes.
She's
Ms.
shaking her
Purnell?
head.
Yes.
Ms. Sedgwick?
Yes.
Ms. Tosti Vasey?
Yes.
Okay, now the other two items, budget versus actual April 2023, budget versus actual summary April 2023.
Okay. On the budget versus actual, there's a really nice $2,200 donation to the general budget, line 387. And we wanted to know what it was for, and I would like to be able to thank the donor for this donation.
I'll have to check with Lori.
Yeah,
and get
but I
back
thought
to
it
you.
was a very nice gesture of whoever did this. And then on the budget versus actual summary, the first column in that is still blank. And I had thought several months ago that it was said that we would have that column filled in as soon as the audit was done. It's still not filled in, and I thought the audit was done. So what's happening?
I don't think the audit is complete.
Okay.
To my knowledge.
Okay, but that was my question, is why is
Yeah.
it still empty?
That's probably why. If you didn't receive it, I'm pretty sure I haven't received it. I don't think it's completed yet.
Okay,
Won't be done till July, usually,
Probably
or
July,
August.
yeah.
okay. Thank you.
Sure.
Okay, we ready to vote on these two now? Roll call, please, Mr. Holder.
Mr. Bernier?
Yes.
Mr. Brockville?
Yes.
Ms. Clayton?
Yes.
Ms. Dan?
Yes.
Mr. Johnson?
Yes.
Ms. McKean?
Yes.
Ms. Purnell?
Yes.
Ms. Sedgwick?
Yes.
Ms. Tosti Vasey?
Yes.
Okay, moving on to reports. Mayor, you've got the floor, please.
Yes, I have a proclamation for a philatelic memorial of the Holocaust. I believe Susanna Mills is here, and maybe some others. Okay. A proclamation of a philatelic memorial of the Holocaust. Whereas the Holocaust was Nazi Germany's deliberate, state-sponsored persecution and murder of approximately 6 million European Jews and millions more Soviet prisoners of war, Romani, Jehovah's Witnesses, homosexuals, and other victims. And whereas the students of Foxborough Regional Charter School collected stamps to represent the millions of victims of the Nazi regime. And whereas the American Philatelic Society built a museum exhibit entitled A Philatelic Memorial of the Holocaust, from a collection of Holocaust postal relics dedicated to the remembrance and the education of terrible events of the Holocaust. And whereas consisting of 11 million stamps, 4 walls of educational and postal history material, and 10 student artworks, the museum exhibit offers the public an opportunity to walk through a timeline of persecution from 1933 to 1945, read postal materials sent to and from ghettos and concentration camps, and witness the remembrance efforts of individuals and the worldwide community after the Nazi regime's fall. And whereas the American Philatelic Society has dedicated and formally opened the museum exhibit to the public on May 31st, 2023, with the partnership of the Penn State Hilo and the Holocaust, Genocide, and Human Rights Educational Initiative. And whereas youth and adults benefit from education about difficult topics, including the Holocaust and genocide, thereby learning empathy, critical thinking, and civic discourse. And whereas the people of the borough of Bellefonte should always remember the terrible events of the Holocaust and honor the victims and survivors through education. Now, therefore, I, Buddy Johnson, Mayor of Bellefonte, do hereby proclaim the official dedication and opening of a philatelic memorial of the Holocaust exhibit in memory of the victims of the Holocaust, and further proclaim that we, as citizens of the borough of Bellefonte, should work to promote human dignity and confront hate whenever and wherever it occurs. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you.
I'd like to add one thing to that. When you guys get a chance, people watching this, if you have not been out to the Philatelic and taken the tour of this Holocaust program that they've set up, it's riveting to go in there and figure that all those stamps that are in that cage came through the Holocaust. And so it's really telling as you go through that and see what's going, what they've done. Those kids did an amazing job with those stamps.
And
Thanks, Randy.
I'd like to add something to what Randy just said. On Sunday, June 11th, I did this last week too. June 11th, from 11 a.m. to 3 p.m., there will be an open house on this Holocaust exhibit. And the teacher who helped put this whole thing together will be here to help do tours. So if you want to get a first-hand version of how it was all put together, come by on June 11th.
Thank you, Joy. Thank you, Randy. Moving on, Chief Weaver.
Hello. This is April's report. So the department notes were more meaningful back in April when the weather broke. So are there any questions at the report? Okay. I wanted to it's not an announcement, official announcement, so I don't want it to be in the newspaper if the CDT's here, but it was announced to Ralph and Mayor and I, and we're going to follow up more. One of our officers has been selected Officer of the Year by the District Attorney. So, and that officer will be recognized. Hopefully, we'll try to do it at the next council meeting locally. And then the officer will be awarded at the Center County Courthouse.
Yes, thank you very much.
Great. Thanks, Chief.
Yes.
Office of Community Affairs, Historical Architectural Review Board. As you can see, the listed items that are being recommended by the HARB board for approval. So I'm looking for a motion to, I'd like to approve those all at once.
I'll make that motion, clarifying that the 438 East Curtin Street one that Chris Morelli mentioned, that one was only slightly different in that this is a one-off.
Sure. Do you want me to
Yeah,
read
explain.
that?
So I'd like to make the motion to accept all those and then have you read into the record what that one-off reasoning was.
Okay.
I would like to pull 112, 106, and 108 as, and you
112,
abstain.
106,
Oh, he-
108. You'd like to pull those from here?
Yeah,
He has
because I
to
have to
abstain.
abstain.
Oh, okay. Thanks, Randy. Okay, where are we at now? You're going to explain to us the one-off?
Sure. The one-off is 438 East Curtin Street. As Mr. Morelli had mentioned in his public comment, this had came to HARB for 2 different reviews. So this meeting that you're looking at is the second review. HARB had requested a little bit additional information on the roof. It is a new style roof. I'm not going to pretend to be an expert in it or know much about it, but It's a metal roof that is meant to look like a cedar shake kind of roof. And it's a more environmentally friendly roof. And there was a lot that, as was previously stated, the applicants had done a lot of research into this roof. So it being a new roof, there was some hesitation by some members of the HARB board, but ultimately they approved it, and they did want to make the note that this type of roof is not a precedent that is set to be blanketly approved for all historic homes in the future, that it is still a case-by-case basis. And they thought that this particular house was a good sort of model test home to do it on, because while it is a historic home, it isn't maybe of as great of a historic character as some of the other homes in the historic district. So that was a longer conversation, but that is the caveat with this approval.
Most of that information was in our packet.
Right.
But thank you, Gina.
And the backup to that is that this has been done in at least one instance before, in which something new and different was done to a roof. And CARB at that point says, we want to test this out first to see if this works. If it does, then we could go ahead for it, but it was not to be a precedent sign. So this is a continuation of that policy.
And code supported it as well.
Yeah.
No heartburn for us.
Yeah,
So it's-
99% of the time, the HARB makes a recommendation for approval.
Motion to approve these all at once?
Yes, yes. But Joanne wanted an explanation from Gina as to, this is a one-time deal. It's not a precedence for all others to use this material unless it's approved by HARB, is the way I understand it. So, any other discussion?
And Ken, the three of them are being removed because he can't vote for
I
them.
understand.
Yeah,
I'll
right.
second the motion so we can get these approved.
Okay.
I understand.
Roll call vote, please. Or any other discussion is what I said. Nothing? Anything? Roll call, please.
Mr. Bernier?
Yes.
Mr. Brackbill?
Yes.
Ms. Clayton?
Yes.
Ms. Dan?
Yes.
Mr. Johnson?
Yes.
Ms. McKean?
Yes.
Ms. Purnell?
Yes.
Ms. Sedgwick?
Yes.
Ms. Tosti-Vasey?
Yes.
Okay, the next item for
Do we have to have a motion for the ones that were pulled?
the what?
The three.
I'll make the
Oh,
motion
oh,
to.
okay, yes.
I'll make the motion for the 112 North Allegheny, 106 North Allegheny, and 108 North Allegheny.
Thank you, Joanne. Second?
I'll second.
Thank you, Barbara. Roll call, please. Or any discussion on the three?
Mr. Bernier?
Yes.
Mr. Brackbill abstains. Ms. Clayton?
Yes.
Ms. Dan?
Yes.
Mr. Johnson?
Yes.
Ms. McKean?
Yes.
Ms. Purnell?
Yes.
Ms. Sedgwick?
Yes.
Ms. Tosti-Vasey?
Yes.
Okay, anything else, Gina?
Yes, the HARB meeting for this upcoming week has been changed to Monday, June 12th at 8:30 virtually. That has been advertised and published in the local paper. If you wish to attend, you can email me for a link. But there was a change due to my impending vacation.
Okay.
So, yeah.
Very good.
Yes, so that's all for HARB. Yeah. There's a motion for the zoning hearing board.
Yeah, I'm
Sorry.
getting to that.
Okay.
Okay. So we have a zoning hearing board vacancy, and in your packet, if you've taken a look at it, I'm looking for a motion to approve Charles Cox for the zoning hearing board vacancy.
I'll make that motion.
Thank you, Deb.
I'll second.
Thank you, Joanne. Moved and seconded. Any discussion on Mr. Cox's appointment? Roll call vote, please, Mr. Altman.
Mr. Bernier?
Yes.
Mr. Brackbill?
Yes.
Ms. Clayton?
Yes.
Ms. Dan?
Yes.
Mr. Johnson?
Yes.
Ms. McKean?
Yes.
Ms. Purnell?
Yes.
Ms. Sedgwick?
Yes.
Ms. Tosti-Vasey?
Yes.
Anything else, Gina?
Just one quick thing, this wasn't in my memo, but for the public and for council, The short-term rental permits for 2023 have all been issued for the applications that I have received. I also went through my list of short-term rentals that I knew that existed, that had rental permits from code, and I sent out reminder letters to those, asking them to, or telling them to submit their application by July 31st. We're giving them that deadline just kind of as a courtesy and because of my vacation. So anyone that has a short-term rental, that has a rental permit from code, that has been operating a short-term rental, has until July 31st to apply to the borough to get their official short-term rental permit from the borough for 2023.
Okay. Anything else?
Nope, that's
Any
all.
questions for Gina? Thanks, Gina.
Thank you.
Good job.
Thank you.
Okay, we're moving on to current and old business. Bellefonte Arts and Crafts Fair, August 4th and 5th, 2023. I'm looking for a motion to approve the Arts and Crafts Fair for August 4th and 5th of 2023.
I'll make that motion, but it's actually a date change. It should be August 3rd from 6 PM through Saturday, August 5th at 8 PM, according to the
So
application.
the 3rd is a Thursday.
Right.
So just so the rest of the council probably already knows this, but Thursday at 6 PM, they would like to close the streets. So that's a good point, Joanne. That's the change. And did I have a motion? You?
I made that motion.
And Deb seconded it. So any discussion?
I just have a question.
Okay?
On their application, they ask, can the below-ground vault in front of the courthouse be repaired and reactivated? First of all, I don't know what that means.
It's the electrical thingy.
Okay, and could this be does this need to be part of the approval, or is this just something Public Works needs to handle?
Well, we've already discussed it in relation to another event. I'm trying to think which one it was, but it's going to take a fairly substantial upgrade to run a lot of power through that electrical circuiting. It needs upgraded, but it's expensive, and I think we have to figure out who's going to pay for that. So right now, it's very limited. It actually ties into the street lights and the traffic lights in that area of the town. So we have very limited use,
Amperage available.
Amperage available. So it's probably not going to be available for artists and people to plug into. I think we already turned down somebody early on, the cruise or somebody.
For the sock off.
Yeah, maybe. But anyway, that's the situation. It's a older system, probably needs considerable money put into it to upgrade it.
So would that be something we would consider for budget next year under our priority systems?
It's worth talking about. Absolutely, that's the time to look at it. How we're going to pay for it, who should pay for it, and so on. But yeah, that's the time to plan for those items.
Okay.
I'll add to that you need to check with whatever manufacturer you're going to use, whoever, that you're going to do it like through the art team here.
Yeah.
Because that stuff is taking a long time to get. We've been waiting for one since last September.
Yeah.
And didn't get it.
Yeah.
So they went another route.
Yeah.
So I have a question for this too, please. So there will be entertainment in a stage like in the past. Will this affect anything?
No, I
with
think
that?
this is something that has been there a long time and not worked properly. And every year during the cruise, it's right where the stage is.
Yeah.
Okay.
And the cruise would like to be able to access it, and the Arts and Crafts Fair would like to be able to access it because it's a source of power to use in the stage area. It would not be for the artists to access power.
You're right on that, but I'm just saying
It's not gonna happen.
The alternative is they have to run a generator or
Right.
something. They're
But
gonna.
will this, I'm sorry.
I'm sorry.
Go ahead.
Well, they're gonna have to do that because.
It's what we've done in the past.
Yeah. So the stage and that entertainment will be okay,
Oh,
though?
it's fine.
Okay,
It's just
great.
that this option has been there, it's just, I think Thomas Edison installed it.
Great, okay, good. We should call him.
Yes.
Okay, any other discussion? Roll call vote, Mr. Haldeman.
Mr. Bernier?
Yes.
Mr. Brackbill?
Yes.
Ms. Clayton?
Yes.
Ms. Dan?
Yes.
Mr. Johnson?
Yes.
Ms. McKean?
Yes.
Ms. Purnell?
Yes.
Ms. Sedgwick?
Yes.
Ms. Tosti Vasey.
Yes.
Thank you. Request to use Governor's Park baseball field for baseball showcase camp on September 10th. I'm looking for a motion and a second.
So moved, Brackville.
Second. Barbara, second. Discussion.
Yes, there shouldn't be any waivers on this thing because this group is based in State College, not Bellefonte, and therefore does not qualify for any waiver of fees.
They're also not a nonprofit.
And they're not a nonprofit as well, that I didn't know.
I don't think they requested a waiver, to my knowledge.
They didn't.
I don't recall.
Yeah, it's not on
They
the,
didn't request a waiver
They
at all.
didn't?
Okay.
Okay. Any other questions? Roll call vote. Mr. Halderman.
Mr. Bernier.
Yes.
Mr. Brackbill.
Yes.
Ms. Cleaton.
Yes.
Ms. Dan.
Yes.
Mr. Johnson.
Yes.
Ms. McKean.
Yes.
Ms. Purnell.
Yes.
Ms. Sedgwick.
Yes.
Ms. Tosti Vasey.
Yes.
Next item, request to hold Flag Day ceremony in Talleyrand Park on June 14th. I'm looking for a motion to approve the Bellefonte Elks' request to use Talleyrand Park for their Flag Day ceremony on June 14th.
I'll make that motion for now.
I'll second.
Thank you. Discussion. Ready? Roll call, please.
Mr. Bernier.
Yes.
Mr. Brackbill.
Yes.
Ms. Cleaton.
Yes.
Ms. Dan.
Yes.
Mr. Johnson.
Yes.
Ms. McKean.
Yes.
Ms. Purnell.
Yes.
Ms. Sedgwick.
Yes.
Ms. Tosti Vasey.
Yes.
Next item, motion to approve the waiver of the Talleyrand Park fee for this request from the Bellefonte Elks to hold the Flag Day ceremony on June 14th.
So moved.
Thank you.
Second.
Thank you. Questions? Roll call.
Mr. Bernier.
Yes.
Mr. Brackbill.
Yes.
Ms. Cleaton.
Yes.
Ms. Dan.
Yes.
Mr. Johnson.
Yes.
Ms. McKean.
Yes.
Ms. Purnell.
Yes.
Ms. Sedgwick.
Yes.
Ms. Tosti Vasey.
Yes.
Thank you. Next item, Bellefonte Area School District Lacrosse Banquet in Governor's Park. Fee waiver request for June 9th. I'm looking for a motion to approve the fee waiver.
So moved, Brackville.
I'll second it, Clayton.
Thank you, Randy. Thank you, Deb. Discussion.
Yes, in the packet, there is one notification, and what the first part of it is to Melissa from, from Heather, requesting that the Bellefonte Area Middle School girls lacrosse team be able to use Pavilion Number 3. And Melissa got back to her and said, unfortunately, Pavilion 3 is rented out, as are the other two pavilions on that day. So there is no application to begin with. There's no indication that this event was approved or that the area is available.
well,
So-
a couple of things. Just renting a pavilion doesn't use a special event application.
Okay.
And as long as they can find a pavilion that works for them, you're okay with waiving the fee, is that right?
Okay.
So that, but it's a whole separate application
Mhm.
thing for pavilion rentals.
Okay, thank you for that clarification.
Yeah, the reason they're coming here is they're asking for the fee waiver. Yeah.
A good question, Deb.
Yeah.
Any other questions? Roll call, please, Mr. Halderman.
Mr. Bernier.
Yes.
Mr. Brackbill.
Yes.
Ms. Cleaton.
Yes.
Ms. Dan.
Yes.
Mr. Johnson.
Yes.
Ms. McKean.
Yes.
Ms. Purnell.
Yes.
Ms. Sedgwick.
Yes.
Ms. Tosti Vasey.
Yes.
Okay, moving on to the next item. Logan Fire Company picnic in Governor's Park, fee waiver request for July 22nd. Looking for a motion and a second to approve the fee waiver for the
Motion.
Logan Fire Company picnic. Use of Pavilion Number 12 on July 22nd, 2023.
So moved, Brackville.
Thank you, Randy.
Second.
Thank you, Joanna. Discussion. Roll call, Mr. Halderman.
Mr. Bernier.
Yes.
Mr. Brackbill.
Yes.
Ms. Cleaton.
Yes.
Ms. Dan.
Yes.
Mr. Johnson.
Yes.
Ms. McKean.
Yes.
Ms. Purnell.
Yes.
Ms. Sedgwick.
Yes.
Ms. Tosti Vasey.
Yes.
Thank you, Dawn. Next item, the Church of the Good Shepherd requests to close Valentine Hill Road from 9 a.m. until 4:30 p.m. on Sunday, July 23rd of 2023 for Vacation Bible School activities. I'd like a motion and a second to conditionally approve the closure of Valentine Hill Road from 9 a.m. 4:30 to 4:30 p.m. on Sunday, July 23rd for Vacation Bible School upon the approval from Spring Township.
I'll make that motion.
Thank you.
I'll second.
Thank you, Barb.
That was Bernier and Dan.
Yes. Discussion. Roll call vote, please.
Mr. Bernier,
Yes.
Mr. Brackbill,
Yes.
Miss Clayton,
Yes.
Miss Dan,
Yes.
Mr. Johnson,
Yes.
Miss McKean,
Yes.
Miss Purnell,
Yes.
Miss Sedgwick,
Yes.
Miss Tosti Vasey.
Yes. Perfect score
Okay.
this week.
Next item. Sean, are you turned on there? Can you hear us here? Okay. We can't hear you right now.
She's muted, she's got her mute
Okay.
on.
I can hear you.
Okay. Well, we're going to do the council member comment for the good of the order. Would you like to start, please? Do you have any comments for council?
No, not this evening. Thank you.
Nothing for tonight? Okay, thank you. Rita?
Sorry you broke up.
Okay.
I actually have two questions. First, and I was thinking about this, and then one of the residents in my neighborhood actually asked me about it, was the hotel down by the park. And she asked me whether it was actually going to happen. And since I hadn't heard anything about it for a while, I thought I would ask.
That's a Jeopardy question.
Okay, so no updates on that at this
Well,
point?
there, only, nothing formal. I mean, we hear from time to time, he's talking maybe to the county government, or they have a redevelopment authority or industrial development authority, but nothing specific, nothing really, he hasn't applied for a building permit yet. We had a meeting maybe 2 months ago with one of the grant administrative agencies that he has, or he's working with. And he did not have updated cost estimates at that time. He's still concerned with inflation, the cost of getting materials, cost of buying materials. So it's really in limbo, to be honest with you.
Mhm.
We actually have rumors, nothing formal, that it might be next year, if at all, you know. So that's what we're kind of hearing. But, you know, he did purchase the property in December of 19, you know, a few months before COVID hit. And of course, COVID, I think, is a legitimate reason to hold off, but now it's inflation's what he's pointing to. But all we can tell you is it's a private property. He allows public access, like people can have events there, work something out with him. But right now it's green space along Spring Creek.
Okay. Second question, I was thinking back to the whole train issue that I had asked about
Sure.
before, and I was wondering, instead of asking the folks at the train facility, whatever, what kind of things are coming through, can we ask them what their emergency plans are if anything spills? That should be public record, should it
That
not?
probably is. I can tell you, like, we have upstream oil companies, you know, they're required to send us updates of what they have in place should there be a spill. I assume the railroad authority has something similar, so I can track that down and see what they have.
Good
A
point,
response
Rita.
plan. Sure.
Thank you.
Yes.
Anything else, Rita?
Nope, that's it.
Deb?
Yes, the Center County Accessible Transportation Fair is going to be held on Thursday, June 15th from 1 to 6:30 p.m. at the Nittany Mall. This is sponsored by CATA, CATAGO, CATA Ride, the Center County Office of Transportation, and the Penn State Transportation Services. This will be an opportunity to learn more about the transportation options available to persons with disabilities across Center County.
Anything
you.
else? No?
That's it.
Okay, thanks, Deb. Joanne?
Yeah, I have a question. Under the list of goals, at the very bottom in the green, there's, the goal tracker states that the Mustard Lane compost facility upgrade is complete. The note on the side says that the cameras have been installed. Does this, when you say that the Mustard Lane has been completed, does this also mean that the bagging equipment has arrived, been installed, and the staff trained or not?
No.
It's arrived and the staff will be trained tomorrow.
Well, that, and then, the AMA site or the platform
The pad
expansion.
is completed.
Pad is completed.
Okay,
Everything is done.
Yes.
We're working on getting reimbursed now.
okay.
Yes.
It's great, so they're gonna be selling bags of mulch.
Eventually, yes,
Yes.
yeah.
I saw the pad and
So
stuff
hope,
out there.
that's
So-
the hope, Ken.
Yeah.
Great.
So one
Yeah,
of the
hope's a
things.
good thing.
So one of the things that the EAB has been asked is, then Don has agreed to do this, is once the training has been done and everything is in place, we'll have like an open house on a Saturday so anybody can come in, see the process working, and so so the community knows how it's gonna work.
That's why you got those bib overalls. All right.
So,
Anything else, Joy?
no, that's it.
Okay, thank you. Randy?
Just one thing, I talked to Ralph about this a couple times, but Dawn Townsend had submitted a volunteer app to join the Civil Service Commission as an alternate, and we have lost that somewhere
Okay.
between that door and that door. So we can figure that out. If you have, give me another one, I'll give it to them.
Okay, we check, but obviously in between, I don't have a status on that, but I will
It's
find
been
out.
a month or so.
Sure.
Is that app available online at the
Yes, but
website?
we can give Randy
Okay.
a copy.
All right.
Yes.
Anything
That's
else,
it.
Randy?
That's it.
Mayor?
Good luck to the Bellefonte baseball team tomorrow. They're in the state quarterfinals. They're playing Indiana High School at Mount Aloysius at 4:30. So they're one of the final 8 teams in the state.
Great.
So we'll know where you're going.
Fantastic.
That's where I'll be. Yeah.
Good.
Girls softball team do.
They dropped their first round game. I think it was 7-2 or 7-3. They lost to Montour. Yeah.
Bald Eagle is still in it, though. They,
So is Penn Valley.
yeah. I noticed that.
That's great.
Mr. Holdeman?
Yeah, just a couple notes for council, for your information and the public. The borough chose the streets that we're going to pave with the 2003 funding based on trying to maximize our budget. The streets that we chose to include in this year's paving project is McAllister, North Ridge, Cedar Lane, Armour Street, and Hale. And then we're also planning to pave South Monroe, but that will be from a different funding pot. Hill and Manchester were the two that didn't make the cut this year. We'll put them back on the list for next year. In addition, wanted to make everyone aware, we received the NPDES and NIPDES permit today for the Parkview Heights Stormwater Project, so we'll begin working on drafting the RFP for that project.
Super. Great.
Yay,
Great.
finally.
Wow.
And you're happy to be here, right?
A little tired.
It's been a long month.
Yeah.
That's what it felt like.
Well, as I know council members are aware, public isn't aware, but a number of us just got back from the Boroughs Association Annual Conference in Hershey. Very well attended, very, very informative. We learned a lot of what's happening in the courts that apply to boroughs, other municipalities as well, but of course we're concerned with what happens with boroughs. There's a lot of laws that we have to abide by, apply to, and take into consideration in different areas of municipal operations. So it's very informative, and I think Barb's going to expand on it maybe the next report meeting that we have, usually the second meeting of the month, but it was very informative. I'm always glad I went. I learned a lot as far as what's happening in the courts, and also equally as important as we network, we talk to people that do the same things that we do, and we learn from each other, so it's very valuable.
Yes, I would agree with all that, and I will have a report next meeting. Just for anybody that hasn't seen, there is an air quality alert due to the wildfires in Canada, so stay tuned to your local weather or news stations for updates on that. It's been pretty bad a couple times today.
Couldn't see the mountains this afternoon.
Yeah, it was kind of scary.
Barb, I think it'd be appropriate if you told people how we made out with the resolutions.
Oh, okay.
Well, I don't know if you're prepared for that.
I don't have the resolutions in front of me, but I will say, and I'll talk about them more next meeting.
Yeah.
But all of ours were approved and will be sent to the lobbyists to work with the state to,
Yeah, state legislator.
state legislators
Give her-
to get
give-
those
yeah.
passed.
She'll have a list
I
for
know,
reports. for
people
us.
need to know, at least,
Sure.
we got through what we sent in.
We did.
Yep.
First time. We should be proud of that.
Thanks, Barb. Anything else?
Nope, that's it.
Johanna?
I don't know.
You can make
I
something up.
lost my train of thought. Definitely go down to the Philatelic Society and see that Holocaust
Yeah.
remembrance through the Philatelic Society. It is beautiful. It's so well done. If you're lucky, grab Susanna there and get the full tour from her. She was one of the masterminds behind it, I believe.
As was Brandy's wife. Don-
And Union Cemetery is doing a work day on Saturday, starting at 9 a.m. So I'm sure they'd appreciate any help that just shows up to do what you can.
Okay. Thank you, Johanna. Mr. Bernier? Nothing. Okay. I do have something, and it relates to the PSAB conference. We were, Bellefonte was really well represented there, and I won't touch on everything, but we had two, where are my notes at? Okay, Deb Cleaton and myself we were awarded the certification borough official, the certified borough official, and that's an award. It's a voluntary educational achievement program for the borough officials. It's designed to promote continuing education through the borough officials and excellence in local government service. Anyhow, congratulations, Deb. Congratulations, Doug. On top of that, we have a pretty active council in the PSAB, our members. Randy is on the board of directors. Ralph is a trustee, and along with that, I have my notes here somewhere for yours. Ralph.
You can lose those if you want.
No, I don't want to lose them. Ralph was awarded an award at the dinner. It's the AC Scales Award. This award is recognizes service to the Pennsylvania State Association of Boroughs. It's given to an individual who has performed exceptionally outstanding service to the PSAB. So a lot of folks don't know what Ralph does beside what he's in this office, but he spends a lot of hours. This is all volunteer stuff that Ralph is asked, and he has a hard time saying no. But Ralph is very well respected in the PSAB organization. We should be awfully proud of what he does for this borough. So I'd like to give him a hand. So I have more I could say, but I could just say my term on council, my 2 terms, Ralph and I have become, I enjoy working with Ralph, and I can understand why the PSAB would recognize him for that award. So that's all I have to say. Motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
Thank you.
And Brian.
We're adjourned.